In this lesson, we'll focus on changing the appearance of our subject's gray facial hair. So let's go ahead and continue on. All right, so now that we've spent a few lessons becoming acclimated to some of the different healing tools over here in our tool panel by basically removing or partly removing some different wrinkles as well as completely removing a lot of those major blemishes, we're going to go ahead and shift gears now and focus on his facial hair. So the goal here will not be to remove his facial hair. That would be a lot easier if it were closer to being stubble, kind of like what you kind of see just kind of right in here. I think at that point we could easily do that, but he's kind of crossed over that threshold. He's kind of started to enter the realm of kind of starting to have a beard. So what we're going to focus on is basically changing the color, basically the appearance of these areas where we have just kind of gray or white hairs. And again, this will kind of add to us peeling away those years. So I'm going to come over here to my layers panel and I'll go ahead and make a new layer right there. And so this first step that we're going to take is basically applying kind of a base color. There's a number of different ways you could really go about doing something like this. And it really kind of, in the end, depends on kind of the image you're working with. But if we kind of zoom in here, we can see he's got some pretty dark hairs and then a few kind of gray or white hairs. But those dark hairs, if you look at them, those individual little hairs, they're pretty high contrast, okay? They're just really just little black lines. Now, with all these kind of clusters of gray and white hairs, I just want to kind of paint a base over them, and then we'll do a second pass on a different layer to kind of individually manually paint over some hairs. I'm going to grab my brush tool, right-click to bring up my brush preset picker. Let's go ahead and go with a soft round brush. I might take down the size just a little there. I'm going to come over here to my brush panel. I'm going to turn on transfer, and just as before, I want pen pressure enabled for both of the controls for opacity and flow. Since I am using a stylus, a pressure-sensitive stylus, I can dictate the opacity and flow based off of how much pressure I apply. Okay. All right. So I want to go ahead and hold down Alt, and I kind of want to sample kind of a real dark brown kind of area. I don't want to use black because it's not really going to give me the best visual result that I want. It's going to feel kind of artificial. Now, right now, as I just kind of paint over these hairs, what's happening is I'm basically covering up information. That's really not what I want to do. I'm not trying to, because if I keep doing this, you're just going to see kind of a paint streak, right? So this is where we want to think about the blend mode we want to use. And so I'm going to come up here in our layers panel where it says normal, and I'm going to change this to where it says hard light. So it's right there. And again, it kind of depends on the image and when it comes to blend modes, and you want to kind of experiment really with a lot of the different just blend modes that we have over here at our disposal. But I kind of found through just some experimentation that hard light in this case was going to give me kind of the visual result that I wanted in regards to kind of painting this kind of initial base. So hard light, basically you can think of it as it's multiplying or it screens the colors depending on the blend color. And this effect is really kind of similar to just shining a harsh spotlight on an image. Okay, but already I've started to reduce that kind of gray-white cluster of hair that we have down there, okay? And I like that it's not completely black, kind of like you see in between those hairs. We can still have a little bit of texture and dimension, okay? So I'm just kind of painting just kind of a base over some of these little areas, even in the areas where it's kind of out of focus over here on the sides. Okay, so just kind of dabbing that in, and even here, just kind of on the above the upper lip, just very lightly applying pressure with my stylus, kind of working in a little bit of that as well. Okay. All right, now what I want to go ahead and do is I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to go ahead and right click, and this time I'm going to choose a hard round brush. I'm going to take it down considerably, probably around like maybe 4 or 5. And then over here in my brush panel, I'm going to turn on Shape Dynamics. For the size, I want to have the control set to pin pressure. And this allows me to dictate the size of my brush tip within the range up to the maximum of 5 pixels there, basically. Okay, and so this is where this kind of process can become rather tedious. Okay, and it'll take a considerable amount of time. But what I'm doing is I'm basically just kind of painting over each one of these individual little hairs, right? And I may want to kind of revisit that base again a little bit later if I want to kind of push that a little bit more. And I think it's okay to have a few kind of gray and white hairs that'll still be kind of evident. I'm just trying to kind of reduce them, reduce the amount. Again, I'm kind of aiming for a guy that is kind of in his late 30s, and often, and of course everyone is different, often you'll start having a few of those gray hairs start to poke in. But already if we kind of zoom out there and we kind of make a comparison, you can already see what I've done. So again, there's a lot of different ways you could really go about this, but for something like this, I kind of like just manually doing it. I feel like I have just a little bit more control. So I'm not going to go through every single one of these individual little hairs with you. Again, it would be very time consuming, rather tedious, but I'm just kind of giving you an idea as to what I'm doing here. Now with this long kind of hair right there, I kind of don't like it. It looks a little weird. So I might go back to my spot healing brush, and I'll just go ahead and do this on the same layer. And I'll just go ahead and get rid of that obnoxious looking hair that's kind of creeping its way out. Okay. And then I might just go ahead and kind of paint over that little area right there. All right. But already, just with what little we've done, you can see what a big difference that's made. And I think that just adds to peeling away a few years on his face. All right, so in the next lesson, we're going to continue on, and we're going to focus on some facial features and maybe reshaping a few, again, to kind of push for something that feels just a little bit more youthful. We'll focus kind of on this eye right here and the nose. So stick around. We'll catch you then.